Good afternoon. The Queen was unable today to go to the Remembrance Sunday service at the Cenotaph in London. Buckingham Palace said she had sprained her back, and it was with great regret that she wasn't able to be there. The Palace had previously said it was the Queen's firm intention to attend the service after taking time away from her duties for health reasons. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell reports.
It was the customary cenotaph commemoration after the limitations last year caused by the pandemic. There was, though, one notable absentee. The Queen did not, as had been expected, take her place on a balcony overlooking the cenotaph. According to Buckingham Palace, she had sprained her back. She continues to rest at Windsor. The Prince of Wales led other senior members of the royal family to their places at the cenotaph in readiness for the 2-minute silence observed in Whitehall and at ceremonies around the country. After the 2-minute silence and the sounding of the last post in Whitehall by Royal Marine buglers, the Prince of Wales placed the Queen's wreath of red poppies against the cenotaph's northern face, in tribute to those from Britain and the Commonwealth who lost their lives in the world wars and more recent conflicts. Then, after the official wreath-laying, it was the return of the Veterans' March Past. The former servicemen and women denied the chance to be at the cenotaph last year, paying their own tributes to former colleagues. The head of state had been absent, a matter of great regret, we're told, to her and to those who were on parade.
Well, let's talk to Nick, and it will have been a real disappointment for her, won't it?
Yes, undoubtedly. We rely, as ever, on what Buckingham Palace tells us. They say that she sprained her back recently. They say that it is unconnected to the advice from the royal doctors 3 weeks ago that she should rest. It's unconnected to the hospital tests, of course, that she underwent. We understand that she was deeply disappointed to have to miss such a significant event, really the most solemn duty of the royal year. Nobody regrets her absence more deeply than she does, according to one source at the palace. And it had indeed been her firm intention to be there. It was one of the reasons why she's been resting for the past 3 weeks. And the palace said on Thursday, definitely, that she would be there. So we will have to see what impact this latest health issue will now have on her programme. We understand that she will be continuing with light duties at Windsor.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you. The president of the COP26 climate conference, Alok Sharma, today said that India and China would have to justify themselves to the world's most climate vulnerable countries after the two nations secured last-minute changes to the climate deal in Glasgow. Those changes last night controversially ended up softening commitments to reduce the use of coal. Our science correspondent, Victoria Gill, reports.
Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
After 2 weeks of sleepless nights and negotiations over every detail, a Glasgow pact on climate change was finally agreed. It was almost derailed at the last moment as India, backed by China, requested a change, watering down a critical line about phasing out coal. Today, COP President Alok Sharma insisted that this deal was a significant step forward.
This is the first time ever that we have got a language about coal in a COP decision. I think that is absolutely historic. But as I said, at the end of the day, China, India are going to have to explain themselves to the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. And you saw the reaction of the climate vulnerable countries to that change.
This is the first COP agreement to mention fossil fuels, the very stuff of greenhouse gas emissions. But while Prime Minister Boris Johnson had previously talked about Glasgow being the beginning of the end of climate change, reacting to this deal, he sounded less certain.
We can't kid ourselves. We haven't beaten climate change, and it would be fatal to think that we have, because there is so much more that still needs to be done. But what we do have now is a viable roadmap.
But environmental campaigners who've been watching this process for many years are encouraged by some of the pledges.
So there's great declarations on forests, we've seen some more good words on oceans at the same time, but we need to make sure they're really followed up with actions.
The planet responds to emissions, not to promises. So the real test of whether these commitments made here in Glasgow will be enough is if they can be acted upon quickly enough to catch up with the speed at which the world is warming up. For the most vulnerable nations, low-lying islands facing the most dangerous impacts of storms and sea level rise, this is a matter of life and death.
We're going to live to fight another day. And we did so much that as a very small island country, I can be deeply proud of.
As nations are asked to come back in 2022 with more ambitious pledges to cut greenhouse gas emissions and catch up with the pace of climate change, tired negotiators are already planning for the next climate summit. Victoria Gill, BBC News in Glasgow.
Live now to Beijing and our correspondent there, Stephen McDonnell. Stephen, why did China want this change on coal?
Well, on the one hand, it will come as something of a blow to people who wanted a more ambitious goal at this conference, to see this wording watered down. But on the other, perhaps we shouldn't be too pessimistic about the final agreement. For example, here we're already seeing in the Communist Party's media mouthpiece, Xinhua Wire Service, commentaries saying that coal is the dominant contributor, the dominant cause for carbon emissions in electricity generation. So that's a message, a party line going out to everyone. Coal, biggest part of the problem. What's also being stressed here from the Chinese delegation at the conference has been its disappointment that the world's wealthiest countries haven't made good on their promises to deliver finance, to deliver technology which would assist developing countries to move to cleaner energy. And they think that's their biggest disappointment at the conference. Of course, Beijing would say that because their argument has always been that the world's wealthiest countries, they're the ones that got us all into this mess in the first place.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Stephen McDonnell reporting from Beijing. Poland's border guard agency has accused neighbouring Belarus of preparing a large group of migrants to make an attempt to cross into its territory by force. Poland's Interior Ministry is warning about false rumours designed to encourage people staying in a makeshift camp to storm the border. Belarus denies allegations that it is engineering a border surge in retaliation for sanctions imposed by the European Union. The Zambian-born best-selling author Wilbur Smith has died at his home in Cape Town at the age of 88. Wilbur Smith wrote more than 40 novels, selling more than 140 million copies around the world. He started with When the Lion Feeds back in 1964. It led to a 19-book series following the fictional Courtney family from the 17th to the 20th century. You can see more on all of today's stories on the BBC News channel. The next news here on BBC One is 5 past 5. Have a lovely Sunday afternoon.